This week on The Watchman, welcome to the Sea of Galilee. This is the region that Jesus made the centerpiece of his ministry. And today, we're walking in the footsteps of the Savior with our good friend Danny the Digger Herman. We will take you to Nazareth, where Jesus grew up, on to Cana, scene of his first miracle, and we will wind up right here on the shores of the Sea of Galilee in the place many call the town of Jesus, Capernaum. If you're a follower of Jesus, get ready to follow him today in the place where it all went down. This week on The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel and only right here on TBN. Danny, great to have you back with us on The Watchman, my friend.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and today's going to be very interesting because we are walking in the footsteps of Jesus. Danny, what better place to start than Nazareth, where he grew up?
The hometown of Jesus is spread right in front of us. Although today it's a big urban metropolis, it's hard to imagine a little tiny first century set of shacks around the spring, but this is the site. This is where it all started.
It's a sprawling metropolis today.
Yeah, it's about 80,000 residents. Ironically, most of them are Muslims. The Christians today are a minority.
And predominantly Arab, by the way. This is kind of the Arab capital of Israel in many ways.
Arabic is the first language here, although it's part of the state of Israel. They're all Israeli citizens. But the focal point from a Christian pilgrimage point of view is a little dot there in the middle of the valley. It's actually the biggest church in Israel, probably the biggest in the Middle East.
Really?
The Church of Annunciation. The place that claims to be the very spot where the angel Gabriel appears to Mary, is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, blessing her and announcing that she has become pregnant.
Yes.
Okay?
Pregnant with a man named Jesus, who would go on to become Jesus.
Jesus of Nazareth,
Yes.
Jesus of here.
Exactly.
So right next to the giant Church of Annunciation, there's also a pretty significant church called the Church of St. Joseph, which claims to be his home/carpentry. Now, first of all, a carpenter is a Western Christian image of his profession. The text doesn't really say that. His profession in the Greek language is tekton. Tekton has a more general meaning of some craftsman. But whatever he was doing, that may have been his workshop in his home. And inside the church, again, there's an underground section which has the statement, this is where he was disciplined to them. Meaning this is where Jesus grew up.
In the first century, we go to the Gospels where Nathanael, the disciple Nathanael says, he hears about Jesus. He says, Nazareth, can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Yes, and especially...
It was a backwater.
And especially coming from the words of Nathanael, which was a native of just a nearby village called Cana.
Yeah.
Okay, the wedding, the miracle at the wedding took place there later on. And he's a neighbor, he knows Nazareth, and it's such an unknown, tiny little place that was his response. It's hard to imagine that Nazareth today. Look just how, urban is this landscape today. It was apparently something really, really small, just a few homes around the spring. Josephus, a very detailed source of the first century who knew this area very well, records many sites and events here. He never mentions Nazareth.
Wow.
Demonstrating, like Nathanael, Nazareth is nowhere.
Yeah, it was insignificant.
Insignificant place. But from the 4th century on, when Christianity is the religion of the Roman Empire, the crowds start coming, the pilgrims. And
It becomes a site of pilgrimage.
To this day, busloads of pilgrims will come on daily basis to visit that spot, the Church of Annunciation, the Church of St. Joseph, the spring named after Mary as well. These are all sites that are so important for the Christian believers today.
Now, Danny, we're going to move on to Cana, which you mentioned, which is famous as really the place of the first miracle of Jesus as described in the Gospels. But talk a bit more about his time here in Nazareth. He was here until he was 30 years old.
Yes, when he is about 30, I quote the text, he meets one called John the Baptist. It didn't happen here, it happened in his travels down the Jordan River. And after his return from that baptism, when the dove appears, the voice says, "This is my son who I have chosen," he returns to his hometown. He wants to convince his neighbors that he is the one. The text tells us he goes into the synagogue. He quotes the prophecies of Isaiah about the arrival of a Messiah, and then he concludes, "Today, these prophecies are now finally being fulfilled."
Before your very eyes.
Before your very eyes, but the reaction is not that positive.
Yeah.
They knew him to be very normal, mortal.
Yeah.
You're the Messiah?
As Jesus said, he quoted Isaiah, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown."
Yes, as
He
a
was
result
rejected
of
here
their
in Nazareth.
rejection, he makes that famous quote, "En navi be'iro," is how Isaiah said that in Hebrew. And he does what I like calling today in the modern high-tech world, a relocation. He moves from Nazareth, he'll never come back, and he goes to a small fishing village by the Sea of Galilee called Capernaum.
Where we will also visit today. Real quick, Danny, before we move on to Cana, where we're standing right now, this beautiful overlook, stunning, of the modern city of Nazareth. This may have had some significance in Jesus' life as well, as mentioned in the Gospels.
Yes, as they reject his proposal that he is the Messiah, they respond, "No, you're not. You are the false Messiah, and false Messiahs should be stoned to death or thrown to their death. And the only place where you can throw someone off a cliff and it could be a deadly fall is right behind us."
Right. Here in Nazareth, this would be the place.
It's on the
It is
edge of
steep,
Nazareth.
folks.
It's outside the city,
Yeah.
but it's on the edge of this environment, and this is a very steep fall.
Yeah.
So this place is called to this day Mount of Precipice or Mount of the Leap.
Wow.
Okay, and it's still not built up. They're still trying to preserve this original environment here. What a view! You can see the
What a
Jezreel Valley,
Yeah.
you can see the Carmel, you can see the Gilboa.
Well, it didn't end, thankfully, on this mountain here, on this cliff for Jesus. We're going to head now to Cana, the site of his first miracle. Danny, lead the way, my friend. Let's do it.
Turning water into wine.
Let's see where it happened. Let's go. Hey everyone, Erick Stakelbeck here. I want you to join me in Washington, D.C. this July for the premier pro-Israel event in the United States. The 14th annual CUFI Washington Summit will be held on July 7th, 8th, and 9th at the D.C. Convention Center, and it will be our biggest and best yet. Thousands of pro-Israel Christians will join together and lift their voices in the nation's capital for Zion's sake. CUFI's founder and chairman, the one and only Pastor John Hagee, will be there. He'll be joined by the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, and many other very special guests. But most importantly, attending CUFI's Washington Summit gives you the chance to personally deliver a strong pro-Israel message to your members of Congress. I'll be in D.C. this summer, and I hope you'll be there too to raise your voice for Israel for such a time as this. Danny, we started this journey today in the footsteps of Jesus in Nazareth, where he grew up. Now we are at the site where he performed his first miracle. Tell us where we are right now.
Gospel of John, chapter 2. And on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana in the Galilee. We are in a site that is only a 20-minute drive from Nazareth, a site that bears the name to this day, Kafir Cana. In Arabic, that means the village of Cana.
And this is kind of known as the Church of the Miracle.
The church of the wedding, the place where Jesus performed the miracle, the first miracle, turning water into wine.
Now, Jesus was here. Some of his disciples were here. The Gospels say his mother Mary was here, and they ran out of wine.
Yeah.
So Mary actually approached him, and Jesus actually said, "Woman, my time has not come yet."
Yeah.
Not yet.
A bit surprising that response, but he will still perform the miracle.
Yes, he did. And it was interesting because the folks running the wedding, I guess, Danny said, "Wow, you saved the best wine for last."
Yes. And how do we know that this is the place? Look at the entrance. These columns and the capitals are actually recycled from an ancient public building. And inside the church, which is really early 20th century, we have remains of an ancient synagogue. There's an Aramaic inscription there indicating Jews really lived here some 1,500 years ago. And maybe it's the sequence of synagogues, a part of the sequence of synagogues, that the earliest goes through his days.
Now, the wedding in those days, Danny, could conceivably have been held inside a synagogue.
Yeah, a small farm. They didn't have, big halls for events. The synagogues was also the cultural center, the place of public events, of circumcision for the newborns and for weddings. The site was known to be the place of this miracle, but in the 19th century it was purchased by the Catholic Church and then built this very European, German like design, which is actually clever in its symmetrical order to represent the symmetrical harmony of the marriage. But in the work, they found evidence of the ancient synagogue and even combined parts of the building in at least the entrance to the new design. They did some renovations, by the way, in 1999, as the sign is saying there at the entrance. But beneath it, you have both an Aramaic ancient inscription and even one giant stone vat that some say may relate to the miracle, because it says that the water was kept in 6 stone jars, according to the purity rules of the Jews, and these are the jars whose water were turned into wine.
Perhaps those jars are downstairs still. Now, it's very interesting that this is a majority Arab area now in Israel, Nazareth, Cana. But as you said, the Jewish people were here 2,000 years ago.
Oh, big time.
And we have an inscription from 1,500 years ago, roughly, proving that. Tell us more about that. That's one of the big finds here at this site.
Today, the village is clearly an Arab village. It used to be a Christian majority. Now the Muslims are the majority. But archaeology shows that all of this area was clearly Jewish, at least in the days of the Mishnah and the Talmud, and also in the time of Jesus. We have maybe 100 ancient synagogues traced by archaeological surveys and research in this region.
That many here in the Galilee region.
And the 2 most important Jewish books for the Jewish religion of today, the Mishnah and the Talmud, were codified here in the Galilee, in Sepphoris and in Tiberias. A
major place, especially after the destruction of the Second Temple, for the growth of the Jewish people and for the message of the Torah, the Tanakh, to continue. It's kind of cool, Danny, we were here earlier. This is obviously the place of the wedding. People actually come here still, Christian pilgrims, to renew their wedding vows.
It's so moving to see,
it really is.
Couples that have been married for, 20, 30, 40 years, and they come especially here to make this event. Renewal of the vows of our weddings at the very place where Jesus attended a wedding.
Tough to beat that. Okay, we started in Nazareth, where Jesus was reared, where he grew up as a boy. Came here to Cana, where he somewhat reluctantly performed his first miracle, but performed it nonetheless. Now we move on to Capernaum. Man, and his ministry really started to progress by the time we got there. We're going to be on the shores of the Sea of Galilee with Danny the Digger Herman. That's after the break. Do not move. We are in the beautiful, gorgeous Galilee, walking in the footsteps of Jesus today. It's the Watchman, it's Kufi, only right here on TBN from the Galilee.
The silence of millions of Christian bystanders during Hitler's rise to power emboldened the Nazis to carry out their evil extermination plan against the Jewish people. Today, anti-Semitism is on the rise again, and some are even claiming the Holocaust never happened. As Christians, we must not be silent in response to these lies.
To see evil and not call it evil is evil. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak.
This month, Kufi is offering a powerful new mini-book, The Sin of Silence, which documents the first-hand accounts of both the perpetrators and witnesses of the Holocaust. As the generation that experienced the Holocaust disappears, we must keep the memories of these witnesses alive to ensure that such a horror never happens again. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to kufi.org/silence to receive your copy of The Sin of Silence when you support Kufi with a gift of any amount.
Danny, it's a hot day here in the Galilee, but you know what? I love it, and I'm excited because we are at a very special place right now. We are in the place that many call the town of Jesus. Not Nazareth, where we just were and where he was raised, but Capernaum. Tell us why this place is so important, and tell us where we are right now.
Well, Capernaum is the anchor of Jesus' activity here around the Sea of Galilee. You are now standing in front of a monumental doorway. Look at the carvings.
Now that is an arch.
Okay, and wait till you see the interior. Look at this. This, in fact, is the biggest synagogue from antiquity ever found in the Holy Land. It was 2 stories high. It could accommodate hundreds of people inside.
Hundreds.
And this is really spectacular, especially when you think that this is the Galilee. This is not a very big metropolitan environment.
It's not like it was Jerusalem or in Judea. This is Galilee, kind of off the beaten path, you would say.
Yes, and it's really surprising to have such a big synagogue.
You said that this was the largest synagogue in all of Israel. That's stunning.
As far as we know. Maybe there's even a bigger one hiding somewhere, but we found over 100 ancient synagogues. This is the most grand one.
Wow.
And especially coming from this rather not very densely populated part of the land, it's kind of surprising.
That's true. Beautiful structure, by the way. As you said, 2 stories high. You can fit hundreds of people in here in its day. Look at these pillars, and pretty well preserved.
These are Corinthian pillars. The stone itself is white limestone, which is not natural to this area. They were bought from a quarry, which is at least 10 miles away. Wow. This was a big investment.
Big investment, big operation. And this synagogue dates to?
Here is the problem. It actually doesn't date to the 1st century. It's old, but after digging and providing also dating material, the agreement among all scholars that it dates to a later period, to the 4th, 5th, or 6th century, not the time of Jesus.
But they call this place the Synagogue of Jesus.
Well,
how does that work?
Yes, but not this building. This building, labeled as the White Synagogue, dates to the Byzantine period. And when they realized it's from a later time, the Franciscans who are in charge of this whole property, they started tearing the floor. They made 24 strips across this building. Now cement is covering it in most cases. This is still original stone tiling. Okay. But in those parts, in some places, they did find what they were looking for, the 1st century.
They did. So they found the remains of that 1st century synagogue underneath this synagogue.
Yes, there is another building buried beneath this one, rectangular as well, a bit of a smaller scale, and it dates to the 1st century. Unfortunately, they did put the cement to cover all the remains, except for one place, this corner. Let me show you.
Let's do it.
On this corner, you can see 2 very clear features. One, the stone is different. It's not that imported white limestone, but the local black basalt stone, which is also not shaped in any special way. It's just the local stones put together, but they clearly form a building. This is its corner. And look, you see the doorway over here? Yeah. Eric, you cannot rule out the possibility that Jesus himself walked through this very doorway when he attended services in the synagogue beneath the white building here.
Whew. I have to take a deep breath, Danny, as you share that and really try to process that. As a follower of Jesus, the very real possibility, probability perhaps, that Jesus walked through this doorway where we are standing right now, that's tough even for me to comprehend. Yes. Amazing that we're standing here right now.
For a believer, this is really mind-boggling.
It is.
And it's one of 2 buildings that with a great sense of certainty we can associate to Jesus. Another building here in Capernaum. The other building in this site is identified already in ancient time as a site where Jesus healed a person, the mother-in-law of Peter. The Gospel of Mark tells us that it was near the synagogue because they went out of the synagogue and immediately entered that house.
So it must be right across the way.
Exactly. And they've dug all around the synagogue, but behind the entrance here, they found a building with odd features that lead us to believe that's the spot.
Can you take us there?
Let me show you.
Let's go. Danny, I would be remiss to not mention the synagogue we're just leaving is a place where Jesus also very likely taught, first of all. Second of all, cast out demons from a demon-possessed man. This place is kind of a big deal in the history of Jesus' ministry.
Yes, the Gospel of Mark records an event of a man approaching him, shouting at him, and Jesus responds by casting the demon out.
Yes.
That happened also in the synagogue of Capernaum.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, though, right? With the miracles of Jesus in this town, we had Jairus, a leader of a synagogue here in the Galilee. He came to Jesus with an urgent plea. What did he ask him to do?
His daughter was sick, and Jesus healed her. Again, another miracle that he performs here. He heals the servant of a centurion,
Yes, that's
which
right.
is interesting by itself, indicating there was also some Roman presence here.
Danny, one of the things I love about the healing of Jairus' daughter, number one, she was 12 years old. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I can relate. Number two, she rose from the dead. She was in a deep sleep. She was dead. All of a sudden, she was awake. We have something kind of similar here in Capernaum, right, with Peter's mother-in-law. Not dead, but in dire straits.
Yes, and here archaeology has a saying on that story. The Gospel of Mark tells us that they went out of the synagogue and immediately entered the house of the mother-in-law of Peter, but she was sick. Jesus performs a miracle. She's instantly healed, and then she serves him.
She had a fever. She was down for the count. I mean, when you have a bad fever, hey, you can be down for the count for several days.
It takes a while.
Takes a while.
In the case of Jesus, it happened instantly. She is cured and she serves him. Archaeologically, the question is, where could that have happened? And archaeology has found a candidate. Right next to the synagogue,
Oh yeah, stone's throw.
there is a building over here with a very specific layering of it, stratigraphy as we call it.
Okay.
At the lowest level, you have a first century structure,
Right.
but 300 years later, that building is divided by a wall. This is repositioning that wall.
Right.
And another 100 years later, an octagonal building, you can see it very clearly, an octagonal building
Yeah.
is built over it.
Yeah, we see a church was actually built over this structure.
In the
That's-
1980s,
Yeah.
a modern Catholic church was built over it, which
Yeah.
to me looks more like a spaceship
Yeah.
hovering above all of those remains.
But hey, at least you can see the remains, and this is most likely, according to many, the place where Peter may have lived. Peter may have lived right here, the Apostle Peter, and the healing of his mother-in-law went down right here where we're standing right now.
Indeed, and originally the church was covered with mosaic floors.
Mm-hmm.
The one in the middle had an interesting design of a peacock. There's a replica of it presented right
Yeah.
next to the entrance. And all of this is associated with one of the most famous miracles, healing miracles of Jesus.
Yeah, and the Bible says that here in Capernaum, again, the town of Jesus, Danny, so central to Jesus' ministry, he cast out many demons, many people who were sick, he healed here. I think of the great story of the paralyzed man being lowered through the roof by his friends, through the crowd, so Jesus could heal him. All of them. This is a roadmap of the miraculous ministry of Jesus here in Capernaum. You love it up here in Galilee, man. You were dying to bring me up here for a while. You said, let's get up to Galilee.
Definitely.
So-
I'm so happy we finally made
Yeah.
it. Nazareth, Cana, Capernaum, every Christian pilgrim that comes to the Holy Land should also do this part of
Gotta
the
come
land.
here. And the beauty, the landscape, the archaeology, the history, exciting stuff for you too.
Golan Heights is here in the back,
That's
the
right.
Upper Galilee. Okay, this is a beautiful piece of land, as well as very, very significant.
Danny, thank you so much, my friend. Watchman contributor, Danny the Digger Herman. We couldn't do Galilee with anyone else but you.
My pleasure as usual.
Great. It was awesome. And we'll do it again soon here in the land, my friend Danny. Up next, my final thoughts from here in Galilee, the center of Jesus' ministry. That's after the break. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN from the town of Jesus, Capernaum. Don't move.
David Friedman has made history as the first ambassador to serve at the new U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. He plays a pivotal role in the U.S.-Israel relationship, and he'll be a special guest speaker at CUFI's 2019 Washington Summit. He's gone on to become one of the top voices in the U.S. administration, urging the president to move the U.S. Embassy and recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the Jewish state.
Tammy and I welcome you to the opening and dedication of the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, Israel.
CUFI is thrilled to announce that he'll be speaking at our 2019 CUFI Washington Summit during the National Night to Honor Israel. You won't want to miss this historic opportunity to hear from Ambassador Friedman and our many other special guests in person. Register now to attend the CUFI Washington Summit on July 8th and 9th.
welcome back to the Watchman. We are wrapping up from here on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Not a bad view, and what a time to be here, folks. Look, the sun is about to go down, and there is just peace here as the waves are crashing against the shore. There is shalom in this place, and why wouldn't there be? As we showed you today, this was the centerpiece, this region of the ministry of Jesus. We're just a short walk right now from Capernaum, which was known as the town of Jesus, scene of many of his major miracles. And as I see the pilgrims walk through, they visit all these great sites from Nazareth to Cana to Capernaum and beyond here in the Galilee region. I just want to remind them, hey folks, Jesus was a Jew. He was a Jewish man who lived in this region, who loved his people and loved this land. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, I came first and foremost to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I love what my Savior loved, and our team at Christians United for Israel is really a Genesis 12 organization that believes that God will bless those who bless Israel and the Jewish people, and he will surely curse those who curse Israel and the Jewish people. You see the website, you see the phone number there on your screen. Call us, visit the website, and join us. Join this movement of over 4.3 followers of Jesus who are standing boldly and openly with Israel for such a time as this. We will continue to bring you to places like this, the Sea of Galilee, every week right here on the Watchman Show as we travel throughout the land of Israel for Zion's sake. Well, thanks for joining us this week for an amazing walk in the footsteps of Jesus right here in the Galilee region. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.